Hello, Emily. How are you doing? It's Miguel. Let me get comfortable here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm still making adjustments to my camera. Forgive me. All right, that's pretty good. So today is Sunday, the 27th of November, 2016, and it is 8:38 a.m. And I thought that I'd make a video for you. Let's see, what have I been thinking about lately? Well, first of all, it's been Thanksgiving. I hope you had an enjoyable Thanksgiving weekend. I didn't do anything really special this weekend. I just sort of hung out and did regular stuff. So I've had a very pleasant vacation from work, and I need to take more time off. Really, I'll take more time off in December. So I did want to. I was thinking this morning about free will, and I figured that I'd talk a little bit about what I thought about the free will discussion, and give you a little bit of insight into what my ideas are right now about free will, because I think it's an interesting subject, and I think that subject bears on a lot of issues. For example, whether or not people have free will would dictate how people are, whether people are put in prison for committing crimes, and whether and their punishment. Free will and the question and the answers to that question would sort of dictate how people make moral judgments about others. I mean, if a person didn't have free will, then it's hard to make really harsh judgments against people for performing, for doing stuff, either good or bad. So that's how free will enters the discussion about moral judgments and prison sentences, things like that. So I was thinking about it this time, and so I want maybe if you're willing, maybe I could share with you my ideas about free will. So here's my stance right now. My stance is that free will, well, first of all, doesn't exist. Free will is essentially an invention by religion to sort of create moral judgment and keep people under control. So free will, I'm going to toss that out. I don't think free will exists. I and my training as a scientist think that determinism, that the universe is a clockwork universe, and that determinism is the law of the land. The law of the land in the sense that conservation of energy, conservation of mass, conservation of angular momentum, conservation of charge, all apply all the time, and they apply in the brain all the time. It is never the case that when a person, say, chooses between apples or bananas, that in the background there's this soul entity that is grabbing a molecule in the brain and shifting it from position A to position B to make a person choose apples over bananas. That shift of a molecule from one place to another place by the soul, that would be conservation of energy problem. And so because of that, free will could not exist in the sense where souls move molecules. So what's really going on? I think that consciousness is sort of a feedback mechanism it's sort of an eye on the calculations that are happening in the brain. You know, there's external eyes, physical eyes, and then there's an internal eye where we watch our mind's contents with our mental eyes, and we watch these calculations, these computations occur in our brain, you know, as the neurons fire. And I think of consciousness as like this feedback mechanism. There are always calculations going on all the time in this clockwork universe. Some calculations are not very complex, but there are complex calculations going on. For example, like a bacteria, a bacterium will negotiate its environment through gradients of concentration of solutes, solutions, you know, and bacteria will move about in their environment, single cells even, and they capture food and engulf it and things like that. You know, that is kind of an intelligence if you think about it. It's just not conscious. It's a single cell. And, you know, the single cell, you know, it's programmed by its features. You know, it's got organelles, and it's got the properties of its semi-permeable membrane. Those are its programming, right? It's programming to respond to gradients in concentration and acids and bases. You know, that's its programming. It's been conditioned through its sort of genetic endowment, these bacteria, to operate in certain ways and do certain calculations, but they're not conscious. I mean, there's no nervous system inside of a single cell organism, but it operates in a intelligent way, right? Now, human brains are similar. Human brains, except we have consciousness where there's this visual eye, this feedback mechanism. Actually, it's just we observe the contents of our minds just like a computer. You know, when we turn on a computer, the computer takes time. It boots itself and it runs its programs using its software, and it takes time to perform calculations. And, you know, we can watch those calculations real time when we look at a computer screen, computer display. We see the calculations happening. That's exactly what's going on in the brain. There are calculations going on, and we are watching these calculations happen, just like we watch a computer display run its software. And so our brains are like computers. And so there's calculations going on. You know, if someone asks a question like, please give me the name of a city that has the letter A in it. Well, here I am thinking about Alabama, Paris, Albuquerque, right? These are names of cities with A, the letter A in them. So what's happening here is that, you know, there's my conscious awareness, which is this ball that I have, and there's an unconscious part of the brain. And in this unconscious part of the brain, you know, it understands the question and it's generating answers like Alabama, Paris, Albuquerque. And then those ideas, those concepts are getting pushed down through the threshold from the unconscious into the conscious mind. And so I can imagine those concepts moving into the conscious mind, and then I'm choosing whether to act and say Alabama, the word Alabama, as I choose from the concepts in my conscious mind. This is a calculation. This is an integration. The way I'm making the choice about what cities to choose is basically it's just a function of the conditioning that I've had, the social conditioning that I've had over the last 45 years of my life. That's the programming. There's a nervous system programming that takes place. It's enculturation. Over the many, many years of my life, I've created rules. I've created this software about what words to say when in what social context, and I'm just applying these rules in a very mechanistic manner, based on what rules I can remember at the time, right? Because the rules get reinforced after every experience in my culture, and some rules get reinforced more than others. And so there's this, this bias in our nervous system, and this programming, and it's a set of calculations that take place, just like a computer. And the only thing that's unique about consciousness is that we're sort of observing this whole process happen. So the calculations happen, and they happen according to software in a deterministic fashion, where conservation of energy rules. And I can watch it happen. And it appears that all these ideas and concepts are being integrated, that I'm integrating them. That's basically, it's sort of a patchwork where the brain sort of makes me think that it's me that's doing it, when I'm just sort of watching it happen. I mean, actually, when my unconscious comes up with Alabama, Albuquerque, and Paris, where are those ideas coming from? Am I creating those concepts in my unconscious mind? Well, yeah, I am, but I'm not consciously doing it. That's just the calculations going on outside of my conscious mind. And then they get pushed into my conscious mind. And in my conscious mind, I just apply the cultural software rules in a mechanistic way, and then I take action. And I've just been observing. I've been observing this process for so long, I pretend that it's an I or me that's making the decision, when I'm just so familiar with the calculations and how the software works, that I'm kind of just watching it happen from afar, from a distance. I'm watching the calculations occur, and I'm pretending that they're my calculations, that I'm doing it. I mean, I am doing it in some turn of phrase, but it's my brain is doing it. And, my brain does things. My brain creates new ideas in a mechanistic way. Just like my liver, well, actually, I'm trying to think, what creates bile? Is that my liver? What creates bile? Like let's say that my liver creates bile. I think it might be another organ. My spleen? I don't know. I think my liver, my gallbladder. I think it might be my gallbladder which creates bile. So my gallbladder creates bile in the very same way that my brain creates concepts. That's just a functioning brain creates concepts. And a functioning gallbladder creates bile. That's just what these organs do. And so it's just like my brain is an organ like any other organ, and it produces concepts. And these concepts it's just like rain, that it falls out of clouds, just like concepts fall out of brains. And it's a very mechanistic process, and these are natural processes, and they are law abiding. And the brain is just a bunch of neurons, and the neurons respond to their environment with their clicks and chirps, right, of electrical and chemical impulses. So anyway, I don't think that free will exists. I don't think it's real. I think it's the way it's generally conceptualized is just a myth. But what is real is this very deterministic thing. These calculations that occur are very much like a computer. Anyway, I think I probably beat that horse to death. So I'm curious, what's on your mind? Is free will on your mind? And are you a determinist too, or do you think other things about how the brain works and about how you make decisions? I'd be interested to know. I wonder what your opinion is about free will. And now that I'm thinking about it, I spoke earlier about the implications of ideas about free will. And so maybe I'll elaborate on my view about sort of a deterministic consciousness and how that sort of has consequences for beliefs about other things. So I talked about punishment, prisons. So my idea is that if the human brain is very deterministic, then, the outputs of a brain about ideas and actions, they are basically a product of conditioning, social conditioning and chemical conditioning, chemical conditioning. And, what I mean by that is that, we've got adrenal glands that pump adrenaline into our brains. And, so you add different chemicals. I mean, people take psychedelic drugs, right? And it makes their brain go crazy or do all these funny things. That's a deterministic process. Just like the adrenaline is a deterministic process. The adrenaline molecules affect your thinking processes in a deterministic way. Okay, so I'm getting off track here. But so if all behavior is created by the conditioning from a person's environment, then if you want to change that behavior, all you have to do is change the conditioning. And so, for instance, I'm an advocate for prisons and keeping people locked up if at the present moment we don't know how to control their behavior. They're a harm to other people. Definitely keep them in prison. They belong in prison. But there is a subset of prisoners which we have the capability to train. We put them in a new environment and we reinforce the behavior that we want. People are criminals because basically they're trained to be criminals by their environment. And, so I don't have a really punitive outlook on people's behavior. Like, I think my outlook is very pragmatic. It's about, people who are a danger to society, we should definitely set them aside and put them away. And I think a large majority can be trained. I'm an advocate for education, and I think that people can learn different attitudes and ideas about how to live with others, and they can learn things like self-control and virtue, so that they are less prone to break the law. I think also true, we also need better laws. I think a lot of the laws are poorly designed and also poorly implemented, and they actually create, the laws and the justice system actually creates crime. Just because they're inefficient processes. So, anyway. So that's my idea about prisons. I don't necessarily have a very strong punishment. I don't feel like I need to punish people. I mean, they've learned how to behave that they do because of their environment. So I'm sort of lenient about on crime in that respect. And then I was thinking about something else. Virtue. Yeah, virtues. If you want people to be very virtuous, create a society where virtue is reinforced. I'm talking very much like a behaviorist, from a behaviorist perspective. If you ever have a chance to research B.F. Skinner and his like boxes with pigeons and operant conditioning, definitely research that material. There is a lot to learn about behaviorism, and I think it's very worthwhile from a philosophical standpoint and a psychological standpoint to look at. So I've already talked for 20 minutes. So before this video gets too long, let me just conclude by saying that I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. And I hope you have a great week. And I love you very much. And I think about you often. And my doors are always open. And you can call me at any time or text me at any time, and we can have a conversation. I love to have conversations about anything and everything, and pick up a philosophy book and think a little bit about free will. I think that would be a time well spent, very valuable. So I guess that's all I got to say. I hope you have a great morning and a great rest of the day. And if I recall, it's your Thanksgiving holiday next week, so you don't have anything to do. I might just send you a letter and invite you to go see a movie. Disney's Moana is in the theaters right now, and I would love to see Moana with you. And you could bring your parents too. I mean, Bring your mom and bring your stepdad, and we can go all watch a movie together. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. I'll buy the popcorn. How can you pass up a deal like that? I'll even pay for your admission ticket. Anyway, I love you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.